since I'll be presenting, and I'll be just presenting on discovering growth through your customer needs and priorities. So again, welcome back. Just to give you a bit of background of myself, I've been working with customers since the 90s started in sales and then became a sales black belt and then moved on up to be a master black belt in Asia. And what we found was using a lot of these practices that we're talking about, the journey maps and understanding what the customer really needs and linking that to our offerings has made a great impact on the company I was working with back in the 90s, GE, as well as all the other companies I've been able to work with since that time. So today we'll talk about a few different things, and we'll kick it off with a little bit of background on my overall philosophy. It all starts with people. If you don't know the people and you don't have the attitude and you don't know who to be working with, you're not going to be focused on the customer. So it all starts with people and exchanges of information. Then the process, the journey maps, and then the data, and then the technology. But it all starts with the people. So today we'll talk about the customer experience marketplace first, and then we'll talk about building proactive customer lifecycle accounts to drive growth, one of the best practices that we've implemented over the years. Simple but powerful ways to align your performance, variance to want. Sometimes we forget, we make it very complicated and we don't measure what the customer wants. And then enabling the voice of the customer, and then just a tad bit of information on customer loyalty. So let's get started. So we're all in this COVID crisis here and the pandemic, and we all have supply demand imbalances across the supply chain. This is something that one of my partners and I developed for supply chain risk management, but it applies even when the customer, because as the customers are seeing supply demand imbalances, what you're lost is somebody else's opportunity. So being able to rescale, reinvent yourself, reinvent your portfolio to meet the given demand today, those are the companies that are going to be most successful. So are you listening to your customers to find out what their needs are and then adjusting your portfolio to meet their needs? And then the other message I have for you is let customer experience excellence be your brand. Wear it on your sleeve. So what I mean by that is, if you are truly listening to the customer, then your company's brand will be what the customer sees, what your employees see, what your suppliers see. That's your brand image. And if they're all the same, that's pretty good. If they're all different, you have gaps. So let's make our brand image our customer experience. So when we've been able to do that in companies I've worked with and for over the years, we have seen exponential amount of sales. So open up the kimono, so to speak. In the beginning, it's tough because you got to face some things that you don't want to, but really look at it from the customer's perspective of how they view you, how your employees view you, how your suppliers view you, the company, to drive your brand. And if you focus on your brand image, you will be successful. So a poll was put out not too long ago by Super Office of 1,920 business professionals, and customer experiences clearly outranks everything as a top priority. So to show differentiation in the marketplace, and it's been said over and over these last 2 or 3 days, is that customer experience is where it's at. So no argument from anyone here. And there are a few quotations and some statistics out there. I'll just quote a couple of them. That there's 80% increase in revenue for businesses that focus on improving customer experience. I've definitely seen that in my tenure in sales and working with customers. We've been able to double the revenue of our businesses in 36 months. That's not It sounds like it's a crazy number, but it can be done if you work with your customers. And then the very common phrase that all of our presenters have been quoting is 86% of customers say they are ready to pay more if it is getting a better customer experience. So that's a little bit on the marketplace, a rehash. Now let's get into building a proactive customer lifecycle accounts to drive growth. So do we really know what our customers want? Do we really understand their needs? Can we deliver on those wants? Or do we change those wants to our promises? Very often I'll come into a client and I'll look in their ERP and I'll have promise dates. And the first question I'll ask every time, is that a customer promise date or is it our promise date? And the reaction is, oh, it's our promise date to them. Well, what did the customer want? Oh, we don't record that. So you never record what the customer wants relative to what we promise. And if you keep doing that over and over and over again, eventually those customers are going to be leaving. So even in our systems and how we set them up today, are they even set up to capture what our customer wants? That's just the date. What about the product? What about the service? Do we ever capture what the customer actually wants in a transaction? We may think we do with our ERPs, the Salesforce.com and so forth, but we're probably not even capturing what they really want and their desires. And that's why we have attrition. And or we don't get those customers signed. So, we're definitely leaving money on the table because we're not addressing what they want. And there's some things that they want are very easy to do, but maybe not correct in our policy today, but they're very easy to do. They don't cost much for us, but deliver big dividends for the customer. So how do we make our customer win by buying our products? And how do we differentiate ourselves from our competitors who aren't listening to the customers? And that will change how the customers view us and increase our percent of wallet within the customer. So when we say understand the customer's perspective, just like our company, we have our processes. Every company in the world has these main processes that was outlined many years ago by Michael Porter. So every company has these. Where are your services and products fitting within their value chains? Understand the customer's value chain and understand the value of your product or service within their journey. So the better you understand that, the more you can put a value on your product and service that you're providing them. So you need to walk their walk, not our walk. We got to walk their walk so we can talk their talk. And then when you do have customers and you're trying to grow them, which customers are profitable? How do we drive customer tenure? Sometimes you may have customers that you're not making money with until they do so many transactions. Or if they complain so much, you're losing money because your margins are so thin. So roll up your total cost of managing a customer, which is in our next slide, is we're getting into all the different folks that are supporting that one customer. We have all our external, you'll see on the left and right, everything from sales and marketing to obtain the customer, that's sunk cost into the company. Then on the right, you have all the things that are necessary to maintain the customer. So you built all that infrastructure, and then you have what the customer sees, which is your agents, your salespeople, and your installation or service folks. So they're seeing those. But behind the scenes, you have this whole infrastructure. But do you really understand how much it costs to manage that customer on a day-to-day basis? Some customers cost more than others. Do you know who your profitable customers are? Who are your customers that are not profitable? Very often our most profitable customers are the customers we never speak to. And if we never speak to those customers, how are we going to grow those customers? So they will feel ignored because they're not using our services, all these auxiliary services for their problems. They're not complaining. So is a non-complaining customer a good customer because they're profitable? or are they a good customer because they don't complain? So again, understand, how do you find that balance? So we need to look outside in and inside out. So outside in, the customer's perspective, they're looking at you relative to everybody else. They're benchmarking you. They're looking at the competitive. And today, with the internet and e-commerce where it is, as we just discussed with Tariq, it's plentiful. There's tons and tons of competition. So they're seeing a lot of things. And the customer is very busy. They don't want to change providers because that's more time out of their day. So how can we understand where our customers are feeling? So we developed moment of truth indicators. We've seen this by a number of our presenters as a way to drive customer needs. And it's a very common way to drive the customer. And we can do that in focus groups, surveys, life cycle, account management, financials. So there's a number of different things that can be done to drive the customer. So let's talk a little bit more about what that looks like. So when we talk about life cycle accounts, there's a lot of different transactions with the customer, everything from the installation, the billing, the time to install, any follow-up issues that they have, your competition rating, force disconnects that they may have in your product or service that it's not providing, any customer interactions that they've had, where your rating is from a business perspective, a Better Business Bureau perspective, usage patterns. So this is your risk rating. So wouldn't it be nice to have a life cycle account risk rating for each one of your customers? And then what is that customer value to you? How much money did you spend bringing them on board? What is the risk of them not paying their invoices? Do they always pay 10 days late every month? Is that a risk, or is that customer good? Whereas another customer sometimes pays early, sometimes pays late. Which one's higher risk? The customer who pays the same date and time period every time, or the customer who pays sometimes early and sometimes late? So all those things roll into your customer value, because every time you have to call out to contact that customer to pay you, you're spending money, or you could be spending your money and time in other places. And then is it the customer, you know, what kind of order type is it? Is it direct, indirect? Are you working through a third party? Are you reaping all your margin back that you've invested in the customer during the installation, or are you dependent on recurring revenue to recover all the money you've sunk up front to install to bring the customer on board? What is that time to profitability? What's the time to profitability for that client? And then section your customers into different groups, small, medium, and large customers. All of them are going to have different characteristics as you walk through this process. So then you can build your proactive, collaborative growth strategy with those customers and develop those upsell potential interactions. Very often we have campaigns, and the campaigns don't link to the customer, what they have within their four walls. So you sold them something, and then you're asking them to upgrade 2 months after they just bought something brand new. So make sure when you do campaigns like that they're very targeted and smart. So whether you're visiting the customer or you're doing it through social media, watch out for social media launching a campaign that is in conflict with what you've already agreed with the customer. All these things confuse customers and make them want to leave. So assessing the customer touchpoint experiences, again, we have our moment of truth indicators from sales, billing, monitoring, service, installation, etc. All those touch points that you have with the customer in that moment of truth on how they feel about you. And what are those expectations? In simple terms, the Kano model is often used to saying, are we meeting all their must-be's first of all? And then are they faster is better is one-dimensional? And then delighters do we know what the delighters are? So for some clients, a must-be is a delighter for another. Do we understand that? Do we understand how that is different in the United States or around the world, in Singapore, in Belgium? All these things are different because your competition is different. So you need to understand that, and then you need to develop a must-be moment of truth indicator to make sure you are at least achieving that minimum acceptable level of performance of what your customers want. It needs to be written, again, in the customer's terms. So building a system like this will help you in dealing with them. So every time the customer touches you, whether it's sales, installation, billing, dispute, it could be a good experience or a bad experience. If you have too many bad experiences, then the customer is going to leave. So you could have a few good experiences up until billing, and then billing, dispute, service, dispute, billing, dispute. If you have too many of those interactions, and some people say that could be 5 interactions, 3 interactions, what we found is between 5 and 8 of these bad interactions, you're going to lose that customer. So these are at-risk customers. So when you see yourself going in there into that realm, and we have that information, the customer complains, the tone of their voice on the call, you can tell that they're not very happy. So put together a proactive touch strategy to identify these at-risk customers before you pass that threshold level of no return of when the customer is going to leave you. And today, again, 96% of customers will leave for bad customer service. So don't take this lightly. This is a key to maintaining and growing your customer base. And don't rely on just surveys. We love surveys, welcome calls, even dashboards. These are all nice things, but these are reactionary. That's why I call them short-term reactions, because by the time you find out, it may be too late. So put together a collaborative approach of identifying at-risk customers and develop back-end saves, resell, upsells, proactively work out in the marketplace. When we've done this, for customers that were not doing very much business with us, we turn them around. For customers who never contacted us for the last 3 years but paid their recurring, and then we contacted them, we were able to upsell those customers for new services because they're getting knocked on the door by all our competitors. And so at all times, you need to have a proactive touch strategy, especially for your at-risk customers. You can turn your at-risk customers into your growth for your company. And we've done that many times with many different clients. So that's building a proactive customer lifecycle. Next is that I want to share with you are some simple but powerful ways to align variance to one. And saw this another McKinsey Forrester paper recently on what customers expect. They expect remote sales, easy reordering process, and e-commerce models, everything we've discussed this week. And then what are organizations focusing on? This is in the B2B world. Little focus on the customer, we just deliver, we think. We've stunted ability to deliver customer solutions and limited digital tools for the customers. So that's what our customers are saying. This is fairly recent. This isn't a few, 10 years ago. This is a recent survey. So you can look at this in 2 ways. You can look at it as, oh, we're behind, or, oh, we have a lot of opportunity. And in our marketplace, if we are better than our competitors, we can get our unfair market share. So how do we impact that customer impact? And I would bring it down to something that we did over 20 years ago, is start looking at what the customers want, when they want it. So we started measuring customer want dates. It took a massive change in our ERPs because we had to start tracking want dates and promise dates. And it was a cultural change because everybody says, hey, my job is to do the promise date. No, our job is to meet the customer's want. So that was a big change in our company. And so we would say, we don't want to deliver it early, but the customer says, well, I don't want it late. So there's this trade-off immediately, how early and how late. So we call that the span. So 90% of the data is within what we call the span, and 5% of the transactions on the left and 5% transactions on the right. And so what we come up with is what we call a probability plot. For the statisticians out there, it looks pretty familiar. But the point of this is that each one of these little circles here is a transaction. It's a customer event. It's their personal experience with getting what they wanted, when they wanted. So how late is it, or how early it is? Being too early is not good for a customer, because if you're delivering product and they have no place to put it, just like Walmart, if you deliver too early, you're penalized just as much as if you deliver too late. So you need to make it in both of the lower spec limit and the upper spec limit. So 5% of the orders are 15 days early to the request, and 5% are 25 days later than the request. So, that leaves this 40-day span. So that just gives you an example of when we talk about span reduction, what we're looking to do. And we want to reduce that, for instance, down to, 10 days. Now, what would that do to your bottom line if your customers saw you delivering the difference of from 50 days down to 10 days, or 40 days to 10 days? What would the customer think? Well, when we did this in 3 of our businesses, what we saw in a commodity business, complex engineered business, and construction business, what did we see in market share? Our market share jumped. Why? Because we were delivering better than our competitors. And we delivered to the customer want. We built a relationship to understand that, because you can't get a true customer want without a relationship. And so we were able to significantly increase our market share over 2 or 3 years from where we were in the past. We were already, in some of these markets, we were already close to being #1. And in other markets, we were just starting to grow. And now those businesses, as I've seen, those companies have even grown even higher market share, because they understand the power of measuring customer want and reducing the span of the end-to-end delivery. So this is an example of where we started on plants. We were starting up plants and we were late, and these lates were driving a desire to invest in capacity. So what does that mean? That means because we were delivering late, they went up to the CEO, hey, we need to build another factory. So we have to double our size of our factory because we can't deliver on time. That's one way to make it work. Well, what if we just worked on ways of reducing that span over time? What happened was there was a plan for an investment for 3 more lines, which would be a completely different factory. We were able, by reducing the span, not have to move anything. We didn't have to build anything new. We were able to do it all within our own 4 walls. So this is a win-win. This is a win for us because we don't have to expand capacity, #1. And it's a win for the customer because the customer is getting it when they want it. So these are the things that can really drive your customer want. So this isn't fancy digitization. This isn't fancy anything. It's just everybody getting together with a single focus on that overall delivery. How do we reduce the time, the variance between what the customer wanted and what they received? And by over 4 quarters, we were able to drive it even further. So these types of examples are plentiful where we focus on variance to want and what we call stable operations. So that's an example of variance to want. So these are all things that any company can do if you measure it and you focus on it and everybody in the company is behind it. These are the things that can be achieved and get everyone involved. So remember, we're talking about brand. We started about brand. Does everybody in the company, the person on the factory floor, the CEO, your customers, your suppliers, do they all see your company the same way? What you're about, who you're about. So the next topic we're going to talk about is enabling the voice of the customer. So would be remiss not to talk about a lot of the common themes that we address: customer issue resolution, order status, supply chain, inquiry, response. All these types of things are the typical customer themes to make improvements in voice of the customer. We are also starting to see more in the more innovation type areas of providing alternate offerings in our new products, safety, new product development, customer savings and adaptability. Do we measure ourselves on how well we save our customers money? How do we enable that? That's what that is about. So there's a lot of different tools out there. We've been talking about them all week. We have digital twins, process simulation, machine learning, OCR, deep learning, sentiment analysis, all sorts of computer vision. All these types of things can be helping us in here. And our sponsors and so forth have given us great insight to how those things can help in these areas. And it's definitely a very good area to start on your company. But don't forget that there's a lot of other areas that you can make improvements on in the new product introduction area or development, and developing of alternative offerings, safety, and again, these adaptability. There are a lot of different tools out there. There's digital ethnography, there's simulations, there's CAD, there's Internet of Things. All these things are instances of bringing data and information to the forefront through a digital twin so that we can see the day in the life of the product being created for the customer and ensuring that it meets that customer's needs. So just wanted to go over that, share that best practice with you. The next is on, this goes back, I don't know, 30 years now. We started doing quality functional deployment, which is all about listening to the customer. So understanding what's important, what makes them run, what makes them tick, and then putting together criteria and pro forma that meets their criteria. So when we did this, we built joint pro formas with the customer in their world, in their journey. We were able then to take that information to see how our products and services met. Now, if we do that with our top 20 customers across the world, or top 50 customers, look what the wealth of information that is to help us understand where we need to focus. So very exciting type of opportunities. I've done hundreds of these workshops and completely changed the way that we want to work. So this is our old style, so to speak, and we develop packaged solutions for our clients. And then over the years, we've made it a little bit fancier, a little bit more complicated maybe, but we want for your large customers, for your existing customers, for your strategic accounts, your large accounts, we want to win, grow, and retain and sustain their growth. We want to increase our profitable win rate, and we want to increase our percent of wallet with those clients. So we've come up with a process, us with the AIM Institute. Of course, we do the research in the customer. We do discovery interviews and preference interviews. We'll cover those in a minute, and we'll develop that next best alternatives. Then, once we do that, we understand our customer objectives, and the customers are telling us this. It's 100% free form. They tell us. If it's a product line, we'll make surveys with a number of our customers, and if it's tailored for them and it's built for them, then we'll tailor the objectives to that particular solution for them. Then we'll come up with alternative ways, and this is the win-win. How do we get to that win-win with our customers, where they're going to win and we're going to win? And it was amazing over the years when we did this, that how much the customer appreciated it, and we made them stars. We're making them the rock stars of their company. and then we help them build the business case. So we are essentially building the business case for the offering, so that it makes them, it's easy for them to sell to their leaders. And then, of course, you know, after that, we're looking at customer relationship development, and then multiple top customer consolidated feedback. So again, we're taking all that information. Once you build that ecosystem of this information, it's like gold. And your sales folks that may not be willing to be sharing are now gaining insights to the customer that they had not been able to gain otherwise. So through these meetings, we're able to gain quite a bit of insight with our clients, and to help them, so we can help us to help them. And so we do what we call a discovery interview. We ask them what their problems are, what is the end state. Again, this is aligned to their journey map. This is all centered around the customer's journey. Then we ask them through a preference interview to prioritize those challenges in a very standard method. We ask them how the importance, satisfaction of their current, those current attributes are and deliverables. And then we ask them to define barely acceptable and totally satisfied. Now, sometimes realistically, we'll only get one of those, but just having that conversation opens incredible insights. And then we grade ourselves. So if it's a recurring customer and we're offering different things on a yearly basis, it's a large global account, we're always monitoring to see how are we doing. And then these dials can change at any time. And the customer has the right to change any of these dials. And then we measure them for them. If they don't agree with the way we're measuring, or they have a way to measure, we use their measurement systems. And so it's a customer-centric dashboard, and we'll review those. They'll be published monthly, and then quarterly we'll have a review on, you know, a quick review. Could be 15 minutes, 30 minutes review with the executives to make sure that we're on track to deliver on these. And then out of this, of course, when you have dials like this, you have punch lists, you have action items. That's where it really comes down to it. And then if there is an upcoming RFP, it will help us develop that RFP. So that's a case study. So one of the things, this is a real life example where we identified our high risk customers. So we took our customers that we were worried that were going to leave us. Then we conducted the discovery interviews and the preference interviews, came up with the critical customer critical requirements and the targets that we just talked about, the spec limits, and then we jointly improve on those. And some of those we have to change a little bit, and maybe the customer has to give a little bit. We both give a little bit. And then we establish our customer cadence, and then we expand. And then for this particular customer, our goal was $2 to $3 million in revenue and $450,000 in margin, and to accommodate their 2 plant expansions that they were planning, we wanted to make sure we were part of that. So we wanted to maintain our 100% wallet that we had with that client. We had not been talking to them lately, so this was a very important thing. We went through, we identified what their things that they were most concerned about. It's just a very simple meeting where we say, tell us what's working, tell us what's not working. And you have to be a fly on the wall there. You have to let them talk, and you need to make sure you have a cross-functional team of them. You can't just be one person. It needs to be the decision makers and the owners and the implementers of this process. And then after that, we came up with solutions that we both agreed upon. And then when we came up with those improvements, then we drove that. So that customer had said, if we hadn't done this, they were truly not going to buy from us again. And we were able to maintain that 100% a wallet with that client. So that's just one example. There's hundreds of these types of examples of going and talking to the customer and finding out what they really want and delivering it, just showing them a little bit of attention. So We're into our last section. This is pretty, just a very high level look at customer loyalty and building trust. So, you know, we all talk about building trust, and we built this a number of years ago, but I think it still applies. Is, you know, when you're doing business with a customer, especially if you're moving equipment, you know, safety is always clearly the must be, you know, and then the other things that, you know, that the customer is looking for are differentiated offerings, that you're offering new, you're relevant in the current marketplace. And of course, e-business, as we've mentioned a number of times, e-business is a key area. The next is, once you've attained that, then, you know, then you have competitive pricing. Are you competitive priced? Do you have low charge? You know, do you have a good recurring? All these things are key. Then are you kept informed of new offerings? And then are you meeting your quality specs? Because the quality specs are changing all the time. Are you proactive? Are you telling the customer the latest specs? Is that a conversation, or is that somebody telling somebody else something? Then how do you deliver? How are you delivering when the customer has an emergency? Are you able to deliver? You know, is it really easy ordering? Do they always get a fair, you know, a fair value for their money? Are they meaningful and accurate invoices? Are your invoices always correct? Those are all very important things with customers. And then once you've got to that level, again, this is an example. It's not saying that this is for you. You know, then it's, you know, that treats me that I'm important, that they understand what on time and full means to the customer. So that's not on time. When I see OTIF reported out and I see 99 to 100%, then you ask, do you measure the customer want? And they say no. Well, then you're not measuring on time and full. You're measuring your internal processes. You're not measuring the customer's process. How is your customers? Do your customers go to bat with you? Do your customers want to work with you? Do the customers always looking for that next thing from you? Have you built that relationship with your customer? That's the trust factor. So from taking a customer that's on the bottom all the way to the top, may take a couple of years. It's not going to happen overnight, but if you were able to assess that, these are the things that we had developed. And again, I say this as an example, everyone needs to come up with their own trust pyramid for your business that means something to everyone else. So just circling back to the metrics, you know, I just throw a couple more stats out there that, you know, AI and machine learning could handle about 40% of customer interactions. So customers are going to be expecting that we're going to see these customer AI in the marketplace. So if you're not doing that, you're going to be left behind. So definitely need to be focused on that. And, you know, again, 67% of customers say they prefer for self-service. So that doesn't mean they don't want to talk to you about the most important things. They just don't want to talk to you about the things that should be able to be handled through an interface. Why do we need to talk to each other about this? I want to talk to you about what's important to me to help me grow my business. If you want to talk to me about helping me grow business, the door's open. If you want to talk to me about what you want to sell that doesn't have to do with that, they don't want to talk to you. So I'm going to wrap it up right now. Customer experience is wearing your brand on your sleeve. What is your brand? Who are you? What are you? And what will you be to the customer? Your customer decides who your brand is, but it should be the same as your employee and your everyone else. So with that, I end the webinar for myself. It looks like I have a couple questions, so thank you for asking me questions. I appreciate it since I'm trying to multitask here. Thank you, Joe. Let me just read this. Let's see, he says, I have stories of working on federal contract side where many of the suppliers lost their shirts and we're refusing to bid or team on new opportunities due to high cost of doing business. Yeah, that's a tough one. You know, the federal government is a different beast when it comes to understanding your customer needs. So I would say, you know, when we do federal contracts, you got to be very careful on, you know, how you bid and the type of contracts that you have. So I completely agree. You need to understand what the federal government is asking in federal bids. Now, federal bids are the biggest marketplace out there, so it's not something you can ignore today. That's where most of, there's so much funding there, but you just have to be careful that not to get under in doing business at the high cost for there. Generally, you do federal bids to get into marketplaces that you may not get in otherwise. And then the second comment is you have to be careful on the technical engineering side, because resource demands can really make commitments dates difficult. Then you throw out the pandemic shortages and unforeseen issues. It can really make aggressive customer delivery dates difficult to meet. In customer technical fields, the supplier really almost has to be the date based on what they know of how long it takes to supply the machine or the technology. Unrealistic dates can cause liquidation penalties. So bid teams must be cognizant of their production capabilities. Absolutely. That's a great point, Joe. You have to understand what you can deliver and what you can't deliver in today's world. I certainly don't believe in over-promising and under-delivering, but I think what you need to do is work intelligently about how you reduce. If all your customers are asking for your products and services at a faster time than you can deliver, you need to figure out, do I need another plant? Do I need to reduce my overall cycle time of building the products? Where is the bottlenecks in my internal processes? So very often we talk about customer impact as just what we interface with the customer, but it's everything you do behind the walls. So are we really set up for success in delivering, reducing that cycle time? So what are the things that we should be doing and we shouldn't be doing? And those are the tough questions. So if you don't have a program around some kind of continuous improvement program, a real one, not a fake one that goes to the board and reports out numbers, but something that's actually working to reduce cycle times of delivery. If you reduce the time it takes you to deliver something, your cost will go down. It doesn't increase your cost to reduce the time to deliver something. You'll actually save money. That's kind of a paradigm that seems to be difficult for businesses to undertake. Shortening cycle time actually saves money. And if you look at the most successful business people and you look at their history, you'll see here that that was one of the key things that they did, is shorten that cycle time. So those are great questions, Joe. I really appreciate you chiming in there to help me round out my talk. I hope you found this informative. Again, you can contact me at any time. Be more than glad to chat. This is an area I'm really passionate about. And again, customer experience excellence is wearing your brand on your sleeve. Maybe think about that, internalize. It's a lot to take in. But if you really wear your brand on your sleeve, who you stand for, what you stand for, everybody can stand up and be proud of who you are, then your customer experience excellence you will achieve that. Thank you, and we'll catch up with you at the top of the hour.